Today, young school children are expected to act more and more like adults. Even in kindergarten, they sit at desks, fill out worksheets, and take tests. Some believe this approach makes our kids smarter, but research shows otherwise. Children under age 8 learn best by doing, by touching, experimenting, and playing with the things around them. This is the idea behind developmentally appropriate education, an approach that focuses on the natural way young children learn. Play is essential to a developmentally appropriate classroom. When children play, they learn from their peers as well as from their teachers. They take risks, design their own tasks, and take more responsibility for what they learn. And surprisingly, play does not create havoc in the classroom. It actually keeps students on track by keeping them interested. If your child is about to enter school for the first time, you may want to start with a developmentally appropriate classroom. Classrooms should be divided into activity areas. The teacher circulates among different groups when children are busy. In a developmentally appropriate classroom, children learn via meaningful activities. They won't just copy the letters of the alphabet, they'll read or even write stories. Remember, the first learning experience determines a child's attitude toward school for years to come. Children who start with developmentally appropriate education are likely to have higher self-esteem and more confidence in their ability to learn.
What's it been like to develop the developmentally appropriate practice?
What's it been like to spend the last 25 years of your life on something?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of a good question because it's really not so much a personal question for me as it is to kind of reflect on where the field and where the association has been with this construct. It started in sort of a fairly narrow way in the sense that we had a very particular purpose and goal in mind for talking about what's developmentally appropriate. We really wanted to help people to interpret the accreditation standards in a more accurate and consistent way, and we really wanted to address the fact that there was a push-down curriculum going on, that what used to be taught in first grade was being pushed down to kindergarten and down into preschool, and we wanted to sort of call a halt to that movement if possible. So we took a position, which is those were controversial issues, and we took positions about what we thought those things meant. And that's where it originated, and I don't think, from my personal perspective, I don't think any of us were in any way aware that the documents would have such an impact on the field and beyond the field. It was one of the ways that the association became known outside to the broader field of education, and families came to hear that phrase and use that phrase. Over time, I think what was really important to me in terms of from a personal perspective and also from the field is that the opportunity to really explore in depth the concepts that constitute the notion of developmentally appropriate practice, I think was really an incredibly valuable opportunity for the field to explore what it is that we understand about children, about early childhood education, what we understand about development in terms of the role of culture, the role of individual differences, what we understand about the role of the teacher, how complex it is, far more complex, I think, than we conceptualized it, in the early 80s. There were so many ways in which, over time, we began to think more conceptually, and I think that the notion of developmentally appropriate practice as we have it today is really a conceptual framework that is at once complex and also incredibly, I don't want to say simple, but just clear just a way, to communicate sort of this broad body of knowledge in a framework, to bring it into a framework that people can then, as they come into the field, people can begin to hang the new knowledge that they get over time onto that framework. And I think that is, from my way of thinking, that's one of the biggest service that we've done the field in really putting this into writing, what it is we know and what we think is best for young children and for early childhood practice. Well, there's one more point I want to make, and that is that to some extent the question has shifted, and as a result the answer has to shift. Early on the question was more, is it developmentally appropriate? And people thought
Yes or no? Yeah. Yeah.
People thought there was they could either look in the right column in the book,
Yeah.
or they could look, and not even knowing the children in the room, they could make a judgment because somehow or other, they knew the truth. The truth had come down to them as what's developmentally appropriate. And I think now we realize that there is no simple answer to that, for one thing. And part of that answer has to be, what are the children learning from it? How is this practice contributing to children's development and learning? How is it effective for them? And that's a shift in the point of view about what's developmentally appropriate. It makes it a lot harder in the sense of answering those kinds of questions to some extent, but it also makes those answers much more much more beneficial to children.